Hey, John Gilroy here. Today we're going to ask the question, is cyber a data problem? Hit the music, Manny. Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, the podcast that connects you to federal technology leaders. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. We're not in a virtual studio today. We're in a live studio in lovely downtown Arlington, Virginia. We're sitting here with Chris Townsend. He's the Global Vice President, Public Sector for Elastic, E-L-A-S-T-I-C. Face-to-face at last, huh, Chris?
Great to see you as always, John. Thank you very much for having me on today.
I think 10 years ago we were in a radio studio, and that was face-to-face.
That's right. That's right. How times have changed.
I think people can tolerate me about once every 10 years. I was at your public sector event back in March, and I took copious notes. You and Ash and all kinds of smart people talking about Elastic. And in fact, some people ask me, what does Elastic do? And I tell them it's enterprise search, but that's not enough. Let's set the stage for this discussion and say, okay, Chris, we're walking down the street in Arlington here. I turn to you and go, well, what does Elastic do for the federal government? And you will say...
Well, first off, great question. We get that all the time. I always joke we're the best kept secret in tech. Elastic, was founded back in 2012, and as you said, John, we started out as a search company. And what we found was a lot of our customers and our partners were using Elasticsearch for specific use cases. And we're still the second most widely deployed search platform in the world, obviously behind Google. And we're used a lot for enterprise search today. So people are always surprised, things in their day-to-day life, they use Elastic all the time, they just don't know it. When you open up your Uber app and you're searching for the closest Uber, that geolocation match that happens in the background, that search, that's Elastic. When you go to Home Depot and you use their search bar and you're looking for the aisle with the hammers and the 2x4s, that's Elastic running in the background. When you go home at night and you bring up a Netflix movie or show and you use the search feature, that's Elastic powering that search in the background. So we're in a lot of the things that people use every day for enterprise search. But what we found was our enterprise customers and our public sector customers and partners were using Elastic for things like cybersecurity threat hunting, for network observability and application performance management, for data analytics. So we built out-of-the-box turnkey solutions going back 6 or 7 years ago now in those specific areas. So we built a SIEM that runs on the Elasticsearch platform. And now that SIEM is one of the industry-leading SIEMs, Gartner upper right quadrant, all that stuff, Forrester Wave. So we're a industry-wide recognized SIEM, and we've got a very large deployment across public sector because our technology, and we'll get into this a little bit later, sets up very well in the public sector market in terms of our ability to index data on a very large scale and highly siloed environments. The same with our network observability as well.
Good. Security Information Event Manager, that's a scene. Let's talk about security. If you're a sentient human being, you realize that there's all kinds of attacks taking place now in the federal government, outside the federal government. In fact, because I listen to podcasts, believe it or not, I was listening to a podcast this morning, and a guy from Palo Alto, he said that there's 9 million zero-day attacks every day. I think to myself, whoa, but that's a volume there. And so how do you see this increasing threat? How does it play out in the federal government?
Everyone's talking about artificial intelligence today. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about AI throughout the course of our time today together. AI has enabled our adversaries to build much more sophisticated threats much more quickly than they were able to in the past. I've been in cybersecurity for a long time. I started back in the late 90s, 1998, when I first started working in cyber. And back then, to develop a zero-day attack was difficult, complicated. Yeah. It took there was a lot of cost involved. Now, with AI and a lot of the tools with AI, there are zero-day exploits that can be developed very, very quickly and executed very, very quickly. So it's important that our agencies are able to match that capability to be able to defend their organizations with AI-powered cyber.
So you have to match the increased threat with an increased ability to respond.
Absolutely. Our SOC operators, the folks that are sitting in the security operations centers at a lot of our federal agencies, they spend a lot of their time figuring out which is noise and which are actually directed attacks toward their agencies. And that can be overwhelming. They get a lot of alerts, and they've got to figure out, hey, which of these alerts are really correlated and focused on getting into our particular agency, and which are just noise and people knocking on the door. That in and of itself is a very time-consuming task. And then now you couple that with AI and how AI is ramping up the sophistication of those attacks. They need help. They need tools that can match what the adversaries are doing.
Back in March, I was sitting in the audience, and Chris was up on stage, with all those lights on him. And it was the Elastic Public Sector Summit. And he talked about operationalizing data. And that was my open data. So how do you operationalize data, and what does that mean for a federal agency?
Elastic is widely deployed across the federal government and across public sector. And and it's a very large vertical. It's in fact our largest vertical for us across all of Elastic. So our biggest individual customer set is public sector. And I think the reason for that, John, is that our data platform was developed as an open source platform, and it integrates with a lot of other systems and tools. It was built organically from the ground up. And the advantage that we have, and the reason we set up so well in public sector, is if you think about an organization like the Department of War or the VA or Department of Homeland Security, and you think about the size and scale of those agencies, they're just massive. And they have data everywhere across their organization. They have data in all of the hyperscaler environments. They've got some in Amazon and some in Google and some in Microsoft and some in Oracle. And then they have a lot of data on their self-managed environment on-prem. And in order to access all of that data simultaneously, they need a solution that can tie into and index that data where the data lives, because they're not going to take all the data they have spread around their agencies and move it all into a single location, or they're not going to duplicate it all. They're not going to replicate it all. It's too expensive. So they need to be able to index it where it lives, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, and be able to search it centrally and not move all of the data around when you're searching it, just moving the relevant information. And that's one of the reasons that Elastic has been so successful. For example, we've been the CDM dashboard standard, the Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation Program for DHS. We've been the standard in that program now for 4 or 5 years. And the reason is that we can index the data at all 100 civilian agencies, the security data, locally, but search it centrally and avoid the duplication or replication cost associated with moving data around.
I think that's defining what enterprise search is. It's like if you're looking something specific, if you lost your keys in the District of Columbia, you don't want to include Montana in the search or Uzbekistan in the search. You want to keep it to one geographic area. But as far as data goes, it can be defined much more carefully with a product like Elastic.
Yeah, exactly right. You want to be able to search the data where the data lives. We like to say at Elastic, data has gravity, and if you move data, replicate data, duplicate data, it gets very expensive. So let's leave the data where it is, index it there, and then search it from a central location. And that's whether you're going to do it for security, whether you're going to do it for network observability and management, or whether you're going to do it for operationalizing AI, where you want to start to put an enterprise AI approach to build AI agents. You want to be able to take that data from all those disparate locations, all those data silos, and take it in a standardized way and feed it into those LLMs and agentic AI tools.
Speaking of tools, the phrase that pays, I think, is tool sprawl. So what's happened in the last 2 years that I've seen is, so John Gilroy hears about this and he gets his tool for AI. Then 6 months later, I see another bright shiny eye, I've got to have that. And then Rodney's software's got, I got to have that. And all of a sudden, I've got this mess. And so I think a lot of the ways that humans solve problems paints them into a corner, and maybe they need more a generic place to look for things, because a specific tool may not be looking in the right area, could it?
Yeah, 100%. And look, our organizations, whether it's a public sector organization or private sector organization, are somewhat siloed unto themselves, right? You've got a security organization, you've got a network management organization, you may have a group that's now focused on building AI tools. And each one of those organizations are buying a tool to index their data and use their data for their particular mission. Yes, at Elastic we say, hey, index your data once and use it many times. Why pay to index your own data multiple times with multiple tools? You're just creating operational complexity, additional cost, and lack of interoperability. One of the big things with Elastic, and again, because we're an open source company, we have open sourced our data schema as well to the Open Telemetry Project, OTEL, it's called. So our data schema is now open sourced. So when you use Elastic, you're embracing an open standard for data sharing. So you're not locked into using Elastic.
We are in Arlington, Virginia, and I'm sure if you ride one of those scooters, you go downhill all the way to the river, and then you see the White House right across the river. We know that. So let's talk about the White House. The White House has a cybersecurity strategy, and it talks about defending federal networks and deterring intrusions at scale. So that's the phrase that pays, at scale. Maybe a tool can maybe protect one segment or one part of a network, but the tough one is the scale thing. And so what core steps should agencies take to be able to even think about scaling?
Yeah, this is a tough one, and one of the areas again that I think Elastic really excels, and why we're seeing such broad adoption in public sector. I think all of our cyber operators now and all of our chief information security officers have identified that security is a data problem. The more data that we can bring into your security environment and analyze very quickly, and especially now that we're using AI tools to do data analysis and and security triage that data, the more effective you are defending your environment. The challenge is, again, bringing data into these environments can be expensive. Storing the data, the infrastructure required can be expensive. That's why Elastic's done a lot of innovation around reducing the cost of data storage. And we've actually introduced a capability last year we call LogsDB that allows you to compress a lot of that data. The way that we index the data, and I don't want to get too in the weeds technically, but we index the data when we bring it in to the infrastructure, when we bring it into the system. Some other data analysis tools index the data as they're searching the data. We index it all as we bring it in. So what that allows us to do is essentially build a table of contents of that data, and we call it a searchable snapshot. That allows us, for our customers, but all of their data in the lowest cost storage, in object-based storage, in S3 storage, blob storage, whatever you're using. You could put your data in the lowest cost storage, but it's still searchable and it still meets all of the M2131 requirements. And now we replaced M2131 with M2614, something like that. But the data is all very searchable very, very quickly.
You go to different towns in the United States, Minneapolis, San Francisco, each has vocabulary. You go to San Francisco and maybe people talk about a data analyst. Okay, it's real popular. And in Arlington here, if you're at a coffee shop, you may meet someone who's a SOC analyst, Secure Operations Center analyst. So what does your technology have to do with the guy at the local coffee shop lamenting about the alerts he has? And so how can you help our poor SOC analyst on Arlington Boulevard here?
Yeah, AI is playing a critical role in the advancement of cyber defense, right? So first, we've had machine learning for a long time, and now AI to find threats, to find those zero-day threats that the person you talked to earlier mentioned. That the advancement of these new threats and being able to identify those and lock them down. What we're really proud of at Elastic, and we were the first to market, was we have an agentic AI tool that empowers the SOC operator. So as I mentioned earlier, the SOC operator comes in the morning, they've got hundreds and hundreds of threats that they have to parse through. And they look at those threats and they find out, hey, there's threats against the network, threats against applications, threats against endpoints. Which of those threats are correlated? Which are just people knocking on the door? Which are just noise? And which are real correlated attacks? We now have an agentic AI capability where you can take all those alerts, feed them into this agentic AI tool that you've trained on your specific environment, the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and all of this other intelligence that we built into that platform. And it will prioritize, the agentic AI will prioritize which of those threats are correlated, which look to be focused on your particular organization. So then you can focus on what's most important. And then we have what we call an AI assistant. You feed the attacks to the AI assistant, and we'll tell you how to specifically remediate those attacks and help you take action on remediation. So it really makes the SOC operator so much more efficient and effective at identifying what's real and mitigating it quickly.
Mike Nichols was at your event in March, and I was taking notes when he was speaking. He talks about root cause analysis. That's 3 words. Every SOC operator wants to hear that, don't they? What's the root cause here? Don't, mess around. Tell me what's the problem here. That's great.
Yeah.
So I took notes when Mike was talking, and there are people saying, oh, AI is going to take my job. Well, he said, no, hey, sit back. Just wait. Every SOC analyst will be a SOC manager from Tier 1 to threat engineer. In other words, they can finally get above the noise and do what they're paid to do. The human brain can actually figure out what's deceptive, what's not deceptive. So this is just putting more horsepower in an individual's analytical capability, I think.
Yeah, 100%. The idea that we're going to go to a fully automated SOC is not where things are going. We have to have a human in the loop. We have to have someone that's using these tools to make them more effective and to stay with the evolving threat. It's not about replacing our SOC analysts. And you think about what some of these tools will do. They'll take a tier 1 SOC operator and help them be more effective and operate at a tier 2 level. We'll take folks in in our Department of War customers that are often rotating through every 3 years as they move to new jobs. Will allow them to ramp more quickly and be effective more quickly, and will make our tier 2 SOC operators, which are very hard to recruit and retain resources, allow them to be more effective and more efficient at their role. So our SOC operators aren't going anywhere. They're overwhelmed as it is now, and these agentic AI tools are just going to help them stay up with the current emerging threat.
Let's take and talk more about data here. I think you're working with CISA on a data standardization project. So why CISA? Why you? What's the value here?
Well, as I mentioned, we've been the CDM dashboard and the CISA Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation Program for a long time. And CISA has been very pleased with our performance there in terms of being able to pull data from all these disparate agencies and pull it in and make it visible and usable, and to get ahead of some of these threats and to monitor what's happening at all these disparate agencies. So CISA always planned under the CDM program to offer a managed SIM service for agencies that didn't want to manage their own SIM platform. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to get rid of their SOC operations environment. They're going to continue with their own operators for their agency, but just to manage the platform and the logging and the infrastructure, which can be very, very expensive if you're a large agency. CISA is now offering to take that over using the Elastic platform essentially as a SIM as a service offering, and we're doing that with our FedRAMP Moderate or FedRAMP High platform.
I went to YouTube, typed in Elastic, and I looked at some demonstrations of what you folks can do. And when I wrote the word log down, I keep thinking of black and white text that goes on for 6 and 7 hours. However, what I've noticed in the demonstration of Elastic is that it's almost color-coded. And all of a sudden, this is pretty obvious what's going on here. And just that technique alone can reduce a lot of false positives and missing effort, huh?
Yeah, and we're continue to enrich our ability to look at log data. And one of the really cool things that Elastic does, and one of the reasons that we've been so widely used for log data, is because log data is very messy, it's unstructured, and we're able to bring in this very messy unstructured data, make sense of it very, very quickly. And we've got 400 out-of-the-box integrations today with a lot of the different technologies you would use and be able to bring that data in, whether you're using Palo Alto or Zscaler or CrowdStrike. We can bring that data into Elastic natively. But if you're using homegrown tools or non-standard tools that are generating logs that are maybe we don't have out-of-the-shelf, off-the-box integrations for, we now have an AI tool that can learn how that log is structured and build an integration on the fly. So we're using AI to bring in and accelerate our ability to ingest data. And then we're also, we recently announced the capability to be able to do metrics. So not only are we doing deep log analysis to be able to do, again, security analysis and network troubleshooting, but now we're able to also go up a level and help you diagnose your metrics, which is a big need for our customers as well.
This is part of the show where I introduce acronyms that very few people know. A SOC analyst is going to know, and you're going to know. Yeah. The acronym here is MTTD, mean time to detect. MTTTR, mean time to respond. That's what they want. The whole idea is to respond quickly to these advanced attacks.
Right.
MTTD, that's the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about here, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So, when we talk about using a single solution to be able to ingest all your data and analyze that data for either security or for network management, it's all about finding the threat quickly and remediating it, whether it's a security threat or whether it's a performance bottleneck for your network analysis. And, again, these AI tools are really accelerating our ability to find and remediate threats or, potential bottlenecks in the network.
June 2026, kind of midway through the year. Get out your crystal ball here. What kind of predictions are you looking at the last half of the year?
Well, I think we're going to continue to see a move toward standardization of data. the current administration has really been focused on breaking down data silos, standardizing data so that they can bring data into these large data analytics tools and apply AI and to your point, John, reduce the mean time to detect and remediate threats. That's going to be really, really important as we go forward, and not, again, just for security, but also for network observability and log data in general. So I think we see a lot of agencies that are we talked about SIEM as a service. We see a lot of agencies now lining up to participate in the SIEM as a service program with CISA. So we're really excited about that and our partnership there, and continue to lean in. And then obviously on the agentic AI front, more and more of our agencies are using things like agentic AI to enable the mission, to improve customer experience. There's so much promise with AI. We're seeing a lot of adoption, obviously, in the development side of thing with coding, but agentic AI has so much promise to introduce efficiency in things like a lot of the government mission, right? Proof, care, and service to the veteran, and claims processing, and you can go on and on and on. The challenge is, how do you get the data securely and reliably and predictably into those AI tools in a consistent way so that you can build an enterprise-wide, operationalized, with governance AI program at scale across your agency? And we're seeing Elastic used a lot for that because we are the leading vector database in the world. You got to be able to vectorize the data, and then we also provide retrieval augmented generation and contextual capability to be able to feed agentic AI. So I think you're going to see a lot of adoption of agentic AI with Elastic going forward.
I think what we're seeing here is that we're in a point with AI where it's maturing, where people are looking at token consumption, they're looking at harnesses, they're looking at all kinds of aspects of agentic AI, and they're almost pausing and saying, no, wait a minute, what are we making all these advanced decisions based on? and now they're turning around and going, well, let's look at this data again. And I think that's what's going on with systems, is saying if we can at least standardize the data, then we have a valid point for starting. Because what happens if you can get these answers in 2 or 3 seconds and the wrong answers? It's like, well, it's all for nothing, isn't it?
That's right, and that's one of the biggest challenges. And again, something that we do very, very well in terms of how we are able to normalize the data and provide it securely and reliably into these agentic AI tools, so you don't get the hallucinations and the incorrect answers, right?
Is there a specific white paper or video you'd like to direct our listeners to? I can put it in the show notes. Maybe something right from Elastic. I can put a link to the Elastic there. We'll figure out something. Maybe the demo I saw with the guy taking the logs from making me fall asleep to seeing things pop up. That's a real nice visual.
Yeah. We do have a public sector segment on our website that I'd be happy to provide you some links to, John.
Well, great. This has been a wonderful interview in lovely downtown Arlington. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Chris Townsend, Global Vice President, Public Sector at Elastic.
Thank you.